All right. Hi everyone. Thanks for staying with me for quite a while. I mean, and for this whole talk so far. Yeah, it's usually as the last speaker, when I found out I'm the last speaker, it's like I wonder, I'm going to be dependent on all the great speakers before me to know, whether people are going to stay. And obviously, everybody did a good job. So everybody's still here. Thank you. So anyway, today's topic I'm going to talk about is data-inspired design. And to be honest, this is not really a very big vast topic. The things I talk about generally, it's going to be quite on a technical level because the things that I come up with a lot of time, it's based on what I faced on my day-to-day job, and then as well as somebody need to think about this a little bit more. What can I share with the community on the framework? So that maybe if you are either in the same space as me or in the same situation as me, you have a way to think about some of these things. So data-inspired design, but of course before that, I'll just do a quick introduction. I'm Donald. I'm from Singapore, and I'm with VML, and I head the regional experience design for VML. That's me. But just before I go back to Singapore, I was actually in Hong Kong for 3 years with DLBI and worked with some really great brands over here, including Cathay Pacific, Shangri-La, a little bit of HSBC and stuff. The whole bottom part actually got chopped. A little bit about me, as I was just sharing. So these are some of the people that I've worked with, but a lot of time I also just like to share a little bit more about myself because I think that's more interesting than the work that I do every day. What happens outside of life. I love to cook. I love to cook a lot. Just thought I'd see like some of this dish earlier on. Me and my friend we potluck a lot, and all of us do like try to outdo each other each time. I do a lot of mountain biking, and of course while I was in Hong Kong, I hike a lot. So this time when I just came back, I planned for another trip, over the weekend to try to at least find some opportunity to hike. And a fan of many things, related to robots, whether it's your Star Wars or whether it's a Japanese Gundam, etc. Okay, so now to the topic. Data-inspired, data-driven, data-informed. Just a show of hands, how many of you have heard of some of these terms? All right, anyone can explain the difference between data-driven and data-informed? All right, so that's where I come. Which is good. There's a lot of terms in the industry that sound interchangeable, but they are actually subtle nuances. And reading a lot of literature, I then try to kind of put them into a way that I can hopefully explain. Obviously, this may not be perfect. First thing first is data-informed design. As many things when we design, we are informed by a lot of stuff. Your typical user experience journey will have include like doing some persona, doing some experience mapping, all these things, getting all the inputs, whether primary or secondary, to inform your design. And we say that data-informed design, we are taking lessons from data, okay, and really apply the insights from quality. So in a way, they are a little bit more indirect. We take whatever we learn from data, synthesize it, and then think about how it might influence some of this design. So this is all the data that I see over here. You can go to analytics data in the digital world. You talk about your CRM data. You talk about DMP. You talk about sales data. All these things is data, right? And you can see that booking history, user preference, channel performance. So much data all around if you work in any organization. So that's data-informed design. And quite often when we say data-informed design, when you take all this data, what do you inform? Right? Continue to go on with your user journey, persona, all these things. And later we'll see a few examples. Think about what to do with your usability tests. To a large extent, they inform your content strategy, content marketing, so on and so forth. Data-driven, on the other hand, is you let data drive what is the next thing you're going to do. So they are a little bit more direct. So we look at how to ship fast, how to optimize, and quite often when we talk about data-driven design, we are talking about a conversion optimization program of some sort, right? So most of you, I believe, who have heard of A/B testing. When you launch something, when it's live, all these things kind of belong to the realm of data-driven design. A/B testing, multivariate testing, retargeting is also a form of in ads world. They are a form of data-driven design. Of course, today we talk a lot about personalization. How do we, personalize an experience to someone? That is largely also driven by data, by the data itself. So, who's doing it right? Okay, I'm going to just share a few examples, just to get everybody a sense of who are some of these players out there and what actually go behind the scene. One, Airbnb. They do a lot of split testing. As you can see over here, so in earlier version of Airbnb, if you are early adopter of Airbnb, you see something like this, right? All your listing, very much like still some of your hotel site booking engine is, right? You got a map over here, you got filters, all these things. So you got feedback from the users that, first of all, they have to go in, find out what is the picture, whether they really like stuff, because when you book any hotels, you always look at image, right? So what they notice is from the data, from analytics data, people are doing a lot of what they call pogo sticking. That means they go in, check out the information, a few image, go back to the listing page, in, out, in, out, in, out a lot. So which means that, and then look at what is it that when people go to the page and tinker around with the most, and that is the image, right? So pogo sticking, that's what I just mentioned. They completely miss the filter, which is over here. People look at this, people just sort of be blind to it. And then user also consider report location as one of the central thing, but it's just that small little thing at the side. So which is why then in the second iteration they change it to this design. Very clearly different. They put the filters, etc. along the journey. So definitely a much better design. And what I want to share later on is also in the newest design, what you see today, they flip it around. They flip it around because that listing right now with all the images is very, very much more obvious. So that captured their attention first. They, on the other hand, they did reduce the whole kind of filter thing though, compared to the earlier iteration. Okay, well, I don't work for Airbnb, but if you read the Airbnb notes, they actually share a little bit more around why they do some of these things. So that is using split testing to try out what would actually work. And these are example of data informed meets also data driven at the same time, because they are trying A/B testing, but from all the feedback they use some of these things to choose some of the design. Now another example which many of us might be familiar with is using data to improve utility and with booking partner. So the one that I want to share with you is in this case Skyscanner. Okay, so this one, the animation doesn't need to be there anymore. Is they look at all this data and check out, okay, what functionality, what features do we need? And this is probably the one feature in Skyscanner that differentiates its product from many other flight aggregator. The one thing is they have this ability to search by month. You don't ever really have to enter specific date. You can have which is the cheapest month, or which is the cheapest on the whole month, which is the cheapest date itself. So they came out with this feature because they noticed people have been playing around the dates a lot, like this weekend, that weekend, within July itself, and so on and so forth. So with that, that's why they came out with this feature of giving you the ability to search by the whole month, and then on average, how much time to really book, coming out with all this content. And of course, the other side of the coin is also how do they even get more data? Well, by asking consumers. So every time you leave the site, they know that you come back, they will ask this question, and they know that you didn't make a booking because we can track that. Is how did it went? It could have been better because the flight was not available, the price didn't match, and all those things. So these are examples when you come back to Skyscanner. If you leave, to whether is it a Ctrip, whether is you leave to whatever Jetstar, etc. When you come back. So what they found out is what is the number one problem that consumers are not happy with, and that is the price doesn't match. So the price doesn't match because, as we know, like different countries, different regulation, sometimes it's not compulsory to show all-inclusive price, right? So depending on really where the air carrier is. So that's why they give them the partner some of the feedback, and as a result, most, if not all, of all of the flights that you see in Skyscanner are all-inclusive today. Okay, even though sometimes even I know in Singapore for sure, it's not compulsory to show all-inclusive. On some other market, it is.
All-inclusive meaning like the airport fees?
Yes.
Like that?
Yes. All right. So there is Skyscanner. Another example of Skyscanner, is they do content-driven marketing, and how they go about doing that is let's look at how people land on site, right? And this is not necessary to change anything on my UI. So what they notice is people quite often search for, okay, what's the best time to go to Japan? When's the best time to go to London? So on and so forth. So they monitor all these search terms, search volumes, and then create stories, especially when it's seasonal, right? Like for example, Japan, you know, the one of the most popular period is to go and see the red leaves as well as the cherry blossom, right? At a certain period. So with that, they actually create articles. How many of you have actually seen any articles created by Skyscanner? They don't actually create that much, but those that they create actually get very, very high traffic. So much so that actually I wanted to show you an example. Like best time to book London, they actually is the first result over here. That if you enter it today, I only get this screenshot 3 weeks ago, so probably it's still valid. How to holiday in Japan on a budget, right? You also can see them first on the result. So it's really amazing in terms of how creative they think about how to do content marketing using data as well with all the search terms. So yep, these are a few examples in area where I can relate to. Before I go on, I'd like to just pause for a moment in every section if anyone has any questions. No, then I'll move on. Okay, so then the question is, where do we start? To be honest, there's so many ways you can use data. Either early on shared around how she used some data in terms of whether is it from the water has been filled up, whether to do some actions. Those are just examples of some reasons why you can use data, sensors, all this thing to change your output or change a certain behavior. So where do we start? It's a conversation we can go on and on, but that's why I have to narrow down to one thing today. Maybe if you got a chance later on, I'll be more than happy to share other areas of data-driven design. So I'm going to share a little bit more on personalization, because that's kind of a big thing today, and that's kind of like just something which many of us do in our work, because I love AI, I've been reading a lot, but I haven't personally got a chance to actually play around with it. So something more on an application level, personalization. Okay, and where do we start? Notice that today, people have been talking about data for the longest time. The question is not no data, it's data overload. How do we make sense out of it? In any organization that you work, like we talk about data in form of consumption, engagement, lifestyle, demographics, they are all come in different form. And they are all also in different channels, right? Website, I got some data, your social, you got some data, and probably they are managed by different teams. So display, videos, mobile, many different channels. So it's really a question of data overload. And how do we go about consolidating all of this? Over the last 3 years, I've worked with many organizations that obviously data, connecting the data is one of their #1 priorities. And of course, as an agency, one of the things that we typically will share with them, your first step is to consolidate your data. And that's where the use of DMP, whether is it through Adobe or some other products, doesn't matter. And what it does is consolidating first-party data, third-party data, your analytics, sales data, etc., into a single source, such that all the other channels can then tap onto it. This is just the nature of what DMP is supposed to work. Any questions on what some of these actually mean? Everybody know what first data, second data, third-party data means?
Is third-party, first party is where your website
Yep.
collects, whereas third party is like what Google collects.
Yes, sort of what Google collects. I mean, that is with some, Google owns quite a few other kind of media content, and they do share some of this data. So whether it's double-click and so on and so forth. So third party, you don't own them. You basically you don't know them completely, but there's a way for you to tap into this data and then feed certain ads to them, or get certain content based on, okay, this user that come in because you have been connected through Facebook, you have been connected through Google, etc. I know that this person who come in is a travel enthusiast, so I will give him some level of content. So that's third party data. Second party data is data that you, with some close partners that you have, share. So let's say about in Hong Kong, in this case, it could be your first party if you work with, if you are in Cathay, right? Wherever that you own on, your Marco Polo Club, that's your first data. Your second party data is actually Asia Miles, although technically they're affiliated, but there's more different parties that that can collaborate with and get tag on the data. Third party is where you actually typically purchase. Okay. Any other question? No, I'll move on. All right. So the first step typically is to get a DMP, but of course you can do without as well. So I'm going to talk about designing experience, personalized experience one-on-one. So some of the basic starting point is in personalization. We talk about what is it that we are trying to achieve is solving a problem of relevance. Okay. So there's many ways to use data, but we talk about personalization specifically. You want to make sure that when you put something into a personalization engine or designing for a personalized experience, are you solving a relevance problem? Is it that something that you design is not applicable or it's just not as relevant to a certain set of users? If true, then that's a relevance problem. Quite often, when I work with various on the client side, what they on various discussions, they quite often confuse around what's really personalization versus what's optimization. So if you're trying to play around with, okay, should I make a button bigger? Should I make the CTA higher, lower? This is not really personalized. You're actually trying to optimize the design. Okay, so that's an optimization problem. It's not a relevance problem. Then two, who is experiencing the problem? Who is experiencing this problem, and how do we identify them? Okay, that's also the other step that you need to look at. When we as designers, we always talk about persona. Okay, there is this, business persona that is whether it's ultra high net worth, his lifestyle, and so on and so forth. And then after that, we also talk about, okay, there's this student, there's this millennial. So there's certain things that we associate with certain persona. But when you ask this designer, how do we identify them online? Anyone have any answers?
Maybe like checking their social media profiles.
Okay.
And then trying to look up more information on them.
Yep.
But it's quite tricky.
Yeah, it's very, very tricky. And that's one of the number one problem when we at the start we design personas, and then after that when we speak to our client in terms of personalization, they say, oh, how do we identify that? That becomes a broad question because it's not so clear cut. Later on, I'll come into the next slide and show it's not like something you can make it totally mutually exclusive. You are looking at what is the certain behavior and how do you target and identify that. So who is experiencing a problem and how do I identify? If I say that, okay, I want to target somebody who have elderly at home, do you think you can do that easily? Probably not, right? Because unless they have somewhere, volunteer this information, that's extremely unlikely that you can target. But on the other hand, it's going to be much easier to say you want to target a beauty method, somebody who shop for cosmetics product all the time. Right? Some things like this is very easy to target because of the kind of product they serve in an e-commerce shop, so on and so forth. Yeah, that's that. So then the next step is, do we have a hypothesis on why an alternative will work better? This one, I guess any of us that conduct any experiment would know. Without an hypothesis, you're basically doing trial and error. And with all trial and error, when it works, you never really learn anything from it. So it's why you need to have a hypothesis, because quite often actually it doesn't quite work, or it doesn't quite work to the extent that you think it was. So that's where that you want to know, okay, so it sort of works, but not as much as I thought. What does it mean from that? Then the other one I will share is next step, the other thing you don't consider, has it been tested to work better in our context? Most of us very passionate about our field. We probably read like tens of articles in a week, hundreds of articles a week, right? Some best practices by all these best organizations out there. I'm going to share with my team on Monday when I get back. Why not let's try something like this? And then quite often, if we can't, one, either from a technical team, we can't really do this, or two, you are very successful and then you convince, and then after you implement it, 1 month later when all the data come in from such statistically significant, you say, hey, it doesn't work for me, why? I'll share a few example of why, taking things at face value and then just implementing on your site wouldn't work. I designed quite a few non-profit sites. So one of the non-profit sites that I designed previously was your call to action for donation. Should it be right at the top or should it be right at the bottom? Okay, after you tell the story finish, because like even for example, when you're designing for Kickstarter, something similar, you're asking for money. A show of hands, when do you think showing it at the top will yield higher conversion? Minority. So how about you think that at the bottom will yield higher conversion? More people. Okay. So yeah. So you see, the thing is, it depends, because even on the same site, it will work in different seasons. So I will share the full story. So I designed for Special Olympics, a site for Special Olympics. So when we tested initially, we found out that when the CTA was placed at the top versus at the bottom during normal period, it actually works better when it's at the bottom after we tell the whole story. So majority are right. However, when Special Olympics is coming closer to the date, that same design we test again, the CTA at the top actually works better. Why? Any hypothesis?
Urgency, they've already known about it, so they wanted to get to it as quick as possible.
Exactly that. So the relevance and the context matters a lot. So because there's a lot of marketing materials that have been pushed out during that period, when actually you put it at the top, like people already know what it is, people come here with the intention to convert already, and then that yield better optimization versus, under normal circumstances, people are kind of more interested in knowing their story in full, and then we'll try. So context is very important. The last one is the personalization tactic worth more than the cost of maintaining it? If you think about it, you own any site, own any products, apps, etc. Every personalization tactic that you apply, it's going to be an ongoing cost, right? So let's just say that if I own an e-commerce shop, I have male, female usually is quite a broad group, but let's just say that I have a group that looks at Cheongsam, right? Which is very, very seasonal during the Chinese New Year period. That will be much more interesting. So is it worth it to maintain maybe every, say, Chinese New Year, right? So these are some of the things that we need to look at, say, ROI. Well, this is not a real example that I personally worked on, but you can imagine that this adds to another thing that you need to put in, or rules that you need to put in your personal life, whether you just optimize the Adobe target, etc. So quite often, when you think about ROI, if you have like 10 persona, 20 tactics, etc., you can only maintain so much at one go. And if the ROI is too small, can't justify it, drop it, even though it's kind of work better. So always look back, even though you have implemented already. So always look at whether personalization tactic is worth more than the cost of maintaining it. So here I kind of indirectly talk about what are some of the common personalization mistakes. Mistaking optimization with personalization, targeting problem, haphazard tagging, programming experience without first testing it, as well as lack of resource to sustain it. Inputs to personalizing experience. So this is something which, if any of you have never really dealt with any data before, will be quite helpful, I feel. When you think about trying to design an experience, a web experience, an app experience, what could you deal with? What is it that you need to take note in order to work on any experience? First of all, browser or device data, web behavior, some things that you can track, and customer data if you have any sort of membership. Right? With the combination of these three, which is the most basic, of course there are many, many other forms of data. You need to think about input, because your input is what you enter as a rule, and then you can churn out how to treat them as an experience. So here's some example. So with all of this, earlier I talked about how do we target them, right? You probably want to define a combination of some of these rules. Okay, if somebody have left my site without buying anything over the last 3 days, do this. All right. If somebody haven't come to my site more than a month, do this, right? This is all like based on all these rules over here. Then after that, for example, we talked about earlier on beauty method. That's an example of category affinity. It's, they have to go through certain kind of actions, surfing from site to site, page to page. Of course, we know that they serve a certain type of page more. That means that category affinity with something, it goes up. So that's in terms of a web behavior. So all of these things can be defined based on a variation of this input. Okay. Over here is what I talked about earlier. For a start, usually if you set up this something completely new, you want to define what is segment A based on some of this rule, and then you always want to test it. So your control versus your A/B test. After you're successful, then obviously you see an example where this is, sorry about the line, you have a segment B that you have now, it works. So this become a permanent targeted experience based on A/B test. But you also, if you run a lot of tests, you'll notice that there are some treatment design that might work for both audience. They can actually work with one. And what if, like, you're just trying to drive some general optimization and try out how people react? So that's where you just put a target in terms of like all or something, and then after you try out 2 different designs, and then you see if does different audience actually react differently from a slice and dice perspective. Thinking around how to turn opportunity into targetable experience. We talk about, say, a marketing opportunity, what's the personalization treatment, what's the targetable attribute, so that's the input that you seen earlier, and then what are some of the success indicator data. We talk about when we say that when you need to measure, you need to know as a hypothesis. A few examples over here. Here I'm showing a retail experience because I think that again is something that people might be able to relate to. The next screen we'll see in detail. So this is an example of a mall, right? I know most people don't really serve mall site that much, but let's just say if you go into a mall site, right? What would you want to have as an optimal experience? Because maybe you're looking for a certain promotion, you're looking for a certain offer, so on and so forth. So let's just say that you have a membership, and then you are now logged into a particular mall. What will you do? You have a hypothesis that you want to test, right? You say, okay, there are a lot of deals. We always have a lot of deals for our consumers, but by prioritizing deals, they are most likely our user is most likely to redeem based on their affinity, so beauty method, or whether is it electronics, so on and so forth. Users are more likely to convert. Sounds pretty obvious, right? Pretty intuitive. That should work. The learning agenda here is which type of deals have greater click-through rate, and does that action leads to conversion? And 2, another thing is, actually, if I ask, you want to think about, okay, does user affinity predicts, but does it predict better than overall popularity? Okay. So you may say that, okay, maybe we should do beauty method, like show all the beauty deals to this person. But at the same time, a more simple algorithm would have been whatever that's the most popular, they just show it to all. Right? Let's just say there's a really, really good dessert deal, etc. So would that work better? So now with all these beauty method over here, I show this half, beauty deals on top. We show this half, all the most popular. Which one would you think will work better? So that's like what you want to try out. So a few things that we could do: apply redeemer filter by default, as well as prioritize redemption deal with the highest category affinity for them. And behind the scenes, what do we look at? Is visit the redemption page. That's one in terms of success matrix that we want to look at, and then 2, redemption conversion. We want to test for X weeks depending on when we achieve statistical significance. So these are an example. Any questions? Coming to the last section. Nope. Okay. So now we talk quite basic, some starter form, personalization 101. But what else should we look out for? One is in terms of the taxonomy and analytics tagging. Some of these things, it's going to be quite tricky if you didn't do them properly. So this is all part of setup. If you're thinking about it at the end of the day, your personalization effectiveness, I talked about category affinity earlier on. It's a combination. They rely on your analytics tagging as well as your content taxonomy. Everybody familiar with content taxonomy? What do you do with that, etc.? Right? So one, nomenclature, right? Nomenclature is something people can relate with is just as important. If you use a nomenclature that nobody can relate with, people are not really going to click on. People are going to have a hard time looking for it. As well as tagging each piece of content with the relevant tags. Of course, there's very, very advanced way of tagging nowadays, a dynamic tag manager. But the basics is how do we program the right type of tags. Over tagging or under tagging will both be an issue because can you imagine every page you over tag it. Chances is everybody is going to belong to every persona. You under tag it, then people they are not really collecting enough points in terms of what profile they belong to. Then analytics tagging. Imagine earlier on some of those input they don't work default over there when you are looking at say Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics. You actually need to set it up properly. So things like success events, campaign tracking, all these things. If you don't set it up, and that's where we go back to a hypothesis. A hypothesis a lot of time will help inform you what kind of analytics tagging or event setup you need to do. So never set up like everything under the sun, right? You need to know what you're looking out for, and then you set it up along the way. If not, you're gonna spend forever to try to set up your analytics. So yeah, this is first thing to note: rubbish in, rubbish out. Make sure things are set up properly. Next, right tools at the right time. I keep emphasizing test it before you implement it as proper experience targeting. So one, A/B testing, multivariate testing. I think in this group, most of you understand the difference between the two. A/B is very straightforward. You're just changing one variable versus multivariate tests. So once you test it, if it's successful, that's when you put into permanent experience targeting. But as I said earlier on, remember that even when you put in experience targeting, you want to monitor what's your ROI conversion. So if it doesn't work, go back, find out why, have a hypothesis on why it works. And my last slide, prioritization framework. You'll notice that if you have such thing as a personalization program, everybody will be, from all departments, everybody will be raising up their hand, hey, let's test this, let's test that, so on and so forth. So which one do you go with first, right? Many, many different organizations have different way of doing that, obviously, whether it's in politics or whatsoever. But in the absence of politics, what are some of the basic ways you can look at it? I call this the PI framework. So evaluating in terms of some score, the opportunity, PI refers to potential. Okay, the potential in terms of an improved user experience, just hypothetical. Two, importance. Importance refers to the improvement from a business perspective, right? We want to look at business as well as user. And then three is, how easy is it to implement? So here is just an example of the table I had earlier. If you put it up, then you can score it, a very simple scoring system. So this gives you a starting point, not an exact science, but at least this ensures that whatever somebody asks for when you want to adopt something versus dispute something, drop something, you at least have something to work around with. So it's very important to have a prioritization framework. Summary I've shared today. One, data informed versus data driven. One, it's a little bit indirect. You take all this data that you've learned, synthesize it. Two, data driven, really more around how looking at certain information or data that you have learned from analytics, or from offline data, and change your design. Some personalization basics, the process, as well as some common mistakes that I have shared based on my years of setting up personalization program. That's it. Thank you.
Questions?
Notes before, right?
Maybe, yeah, I think it's okay. One or two questions?
Apart from Airbnb, is there any other websites or apps that you think do personalization very well?
There's a lot, but what's considered well it's arguable. We have read recently about Uber, right? They actually have discriminate pricing, so that not too it's from an implementation perspective. Obviously, that's not an easy challenge to be able to achieve that. They think that it works well for the business. The same goes for Expedia, right? If you are a Mac user, they actually show you, they didn't have price discrimination, but they have result discrimination in terms of showing you the higher end hotels. on the top. So quite a lot of people are starting to do it, especially your internet companies, because they have all your data scientists to play around with all this tinkering of all this stuff. So a lot of good examples out there.
So I'm not someone who's familiar with data-driven design. If I were to learn about it, any resources or places that I could tap into and know a little bit more, any advice you have?
Linda has a really good course on personalization. Oh, sorry, just generally data personalization design. Which one? Coursera have one as well. I can't remember which school is it. But the one in Coursera is very academic and abstract. If you want something more on an application level, I recommend the one on Linda.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for.